Are you a technician who wants to set yourself apart? Then the Trusted Technician podcast is for you. I'm Derek Hoferter, coach and trainer at SBE, and on this podcast, we will have experienced HVAC coaches and trainers, as well as top-performing technicians, all sharing their tips and strategies to help you be more successful. Welcome back to another episode of the Trusted Technician podcast. I'm Coach Derek at SBE, and today's guest, I have Austin. Austin's an HVAC tech in Texas. Austin, Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas?
Yes.
Yeah, he's with Harris. They've been a longtime partner and a part of the SBE community. So Austin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
So Austin, just to get started so everyone can get to know you a little bit, why are you an HVAC technician, and roughly like how long have you been one?
Yeah, so I got lucky. I started this about 10 years ago. It's about 9, but next year will be 10. Like I said, I got kind of lucky. I was working at a job. I was working 84 hours a week, 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week. Kind of got tired of that, started calling around. My dad always said, HVAC and construction in Texas, you'll always have a job. So just started calling around, calling HVAC companies. It's kind of funny. The owner of this company will tell you he never planned on hiring me. Called him. It's like, hey, you hiring? His receptionist said, yeah, come on in, fill an application out. And he was trying to get out of the building before I ever got here. But he was walking out while I was walking in. And I was kind of just like, hey, are you the owner? I'm here to fill out an application. And I was very driven at that time. I mean, I am now, but it's kind of one of those things where I work smarter, not harder now. So that's why I said I got very lucky, because he never planned on hiring me, and he was trying to get out because he knew that I was young, but we just happened to cross paths at the exit door, and he ended up interviewing me on the spot. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. It's a long story.
You passed the test. You got yourself the interview and passed the test.
He made me wait 4 weeks before he finally brought me on board, because he was very hesitant, because I was only 18. I had just graduated high school, but I had a family. I had a daughter on the way, and I had graduated high school early. So my dad raised me. I didn't have time to sit there and play around. I had to go out and make a living for my family.
Yeah. And about how long ago was that?
And 10 years.
10 years. So you've been doing this for a decade. So in your decade of experience, what do you enjoy the most about being an HVAC technician?
I enjoy helping other people make more money for their family. I've gotten to be able to see the inside of the management role to a technician. And I think the biggest thing is being able to help people make a better life for themselves and their family.
I like that. What do you find to be the most challenging part of it?
With being a technician, or help me understand what you mean by that?
Yeah, as an HVAC technician, like what are the challenges that you have had to overcome, or that you find just make it a challenging job?
Yeah, it's all me. My mind trash is what keeps me from hitting the next level. I mean, I think that's what everybody has, a goal and they have a plan, but sometimes that plan has to change in order to hit the goal that you're trying to achieve. And you can't let yourself get deterred off of what your end result is. You just have to figure out a way to get there.
Yeah. And I like what you did there, by the way, too, which shows to being a good technician, where I asked you a question and then you asked me back a clarifying question, which is a great technique there in your technician skills, to have me clarify what I meant. That's what we try to teach to technicians, stuff like that. So earlier you said something that you've learned during your experience is to work smarter, not harder. Can you give me some examples of what it means as a technician to work smarter, not harder?
Yeah, I mean, my goal, my vision on working smarter and not harder is making the same amount of money, but being able to have a good work-life balance. And it took me a very long time to figure out how to do that. And sometimes I still struggle, but I know that the balance is still going to be there, right? So what I mean by that is making sure my van's kept up, making sure that I'm, qualifying customers before I get into a conversation, to not waste 2 hours with them just for them to tell me, hey, look, we're going to go shop around and stuff. Like, you have to know your customers. Like I said, inventory, all the small things that go into being an efficient technician. Sometimes I still struggle, right? But my goal is to be able to make that 6-figure job while still being home around 5 o'clock every day and be able to spend time with my family. Because I remember when I first started doing this, I was working till 12, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't making anywhere near the kind of money that I am now. And I'm working, getting off at 5 o'clock.
So running fewer calls, doing a better job with the calls that you have. So you said qualify, right? So you're asking questions to figure out the best use of your time during the day. Is that what you mean by qualifying your
Yeah,
customers?
sort of. I think before it was more of like when you find a problem, you would just bring it up instead of stopping in the middle of the process, being like, okay, I know I have problems here with this customer and the equipment, but do I have their trust enough to be able to get them to commit to something? Or is it going to be a situation where I'm just wasting my time? Because there are customers that can't afford stuff, and you have to be able to know that before you go down the solution aisle.
Yeah.
Does that
That,
answer your question?
yeah, that makes sense. I think you can tell me if you agree with this or not, but I think a lot of times, the reflection of how well a tech is doing from like the cold business side of like looking at numbers and things like that, though, is a bit of a translation of their ability to get trust and be trusted from their customers. Would you kind of agree between that correlation of a lot of success comes from the ability to be trustworthy and to,
Yeah, that, and you have to love what you do. If you don't love what you do, then you're not going to be, I've seen that side of myself where I didn't really love what I did and my numbers reflected that. But I think a bigger part of it too has to go to the coach that you have. If you don't have a good coach that's coaching you through and trying to keep you on track and meet your goals and stuff like that, you can be as good as you want to be, but until you have somebody that holds you accountable, it's going to set you back farther on reaching your goals faster.
accountability is massive. And I like what you said there too about a component of that trust is you as the technician, your whatever you want to label it, like your passion or your interest or your curiosity or your care, right? The homeowners sense that, right? Of this, like literally, this person's just trying to take my money, or this person actually cares about what's going on and could take my money, in there if there's kind of like a mutual kind of agreement that this is beneficial to move forward. So is that something then that you really noticed then of your own state of enjoying what you're doing directly results in how your customers view you as their technician?
Yes.
So how do you manage that to be consistent, like through a hot summer, day after day, call after call?
You don't.
Okay, tell me more.
That's the truth, the ugly truth of it. As long as you're watching your numbers, you can see when you start slipping, and when you start catching, then it's like, okay, yeah, I need to start getting back on my process again. Anybody who tells you that they stay on their process all summer long is lying through their teeth. You just get lucky to get a couple sales to make your numbers look good, but you can't lie with your numbers. So when your service tickets start going down and you can see that, it's like, okay, yeah, I kind of got lazy. And then it's time to start fixing it again. But again, that goes back into having a good coach that's watching that to be able to catch it when you're in the middle of summer.
Catch it and call it out.
Right.
Right. Yeah, but probably call it out in a way that lets you kind of come to the conclusion a bit too of what's going on. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good coach, man.
Yeah.
If they can do it without you knowing it. But I think you have to have meaningful goals 100%. If you do not have meaningful goals, if you just say, I've been to classes before where everybody's like, yeah, I have these goals and everything. And then the next question is, okay, well, do you have them written down? And then they'll be like, yeah. And then the next question is, okay, well, when's your end date? When do you have a time frame set on these? And then some people would say, yeah, like before I would tell you yes to all those questions, but none of my goals were meaningful. Now, my situation's changed a little bit with my personal life, and my goals are way more meaningful now. And all that stuff is still yes, where it was before, but now my drive's much different because the goals are meaningful. I'm not just doing it to say, hey, look, yeah, I have goals and blah, blah, because some people have goals and they're just going to get to them whenever they want. Other people have goals and they are not going to move from it.
Yeah. I think that's a very missed opportunity just in general across HVAC industry and other industries as well, as this idea of meaningful goals, right? That it's not just a number that somebody magically came up with? Like
Yeah.
where did that number come from? Like I don't know. That it's something where I'm guessing that for it to be meaningful to you're participating in the goal setting process. Is that correct?
Yeah. And that's the only way that you're going to stay on what you were saying earlier is, stay driven. And during the hot peak of the time is summertime, you have to be able to be like, okay, this kind of sucks right now, but in order for me to get where I need to, I kind of got to go through it.
Yeah. Something too that's always just kind of fascinating. This is just human nature. Like you said, if anyone tells you that they 100% stick to the thing, right? We know they're lying because we know they're humans, and humans don't ever do anything 100% of the time, right? That's what makes us human. But tying it into the work smarter, not harder idea, because isn't it smarter though to just stick to the process, like especially when it is like the bad days, to kind of like rely, just like let the process carry us. So isn't that kind of a fascinating thing that we intellectually understand work smarter, not harder, but then like in the times that we should absolutely work smarter, we end up working harder. Isn't that just kind of a
Yeah, I
weird
agree
thing we
with
do
you.
to ourselves?
Yeah, someone told me one time, I don't remember who it was, it might have been Corey, but actually, I think it was an NFL coach. He said, you will always fall to what your process is. So if you have a really good process and you follow it, even when you're at the worst point of your career, you'll still have better outcomes compared to somebody that doesn't have a process and just kind of plays it call by call. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Uh,
if you have a strong process, even if you fall, you're going to be in a higher position than you would if someone wasn't following the process.
yeah, I like that. I think you're right. Like someone who does not have a process, their dips and valleys and swings are probably going to be much greater and much longer in duration because without a process, like you were saying, it's hard to spot when things are slipping versus like when it's way, way, way slipped versus if you have a process, you look at your numbers, you can probably detect the beginning of something going sideways, right?
Yeah,
Are you stat driven? Like how often do you look at close rates, average tickets? How much does that shape your day-to-day game plan, your week to week, your month to month, your call to call? Where do you fall in that spectrum of your own numbers?
I think it's a mixture of both because I know that as long as I follow a process, stuff's just going to happen, right? I don't have to force it. But there are times where I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, yeah, this month was very slow. But I also have a little bit of perspective that a lot of technicians don't, right? Coming from being a tech, going into that management role, back to being a tech in the field, like those numbers are vital. That's what everybody in the office is looking at. So I know that I have a job to do at the end of the day. And it's not to be unethical or anything, but you have to make sure that yeah, I'm a tech, but I'm also making the money for everybody in the company to feed their
Mm,
families. So my
yeah.
role is much bigger than just providing for my family. So I have to make sure that I'm hitting the goals that I need to. So I look at those numbers every morning before I go to work to see where I'm at. And a lot of times they don't change, but when you get big tickets, they change a lot. And when you go 2 weeks without nothing, they get dragged back down and you have to bring them back up.
Yeah.
So does that kind of answer your
Yeah,
question?
that's an interesting perspective too that you have on it, like you were saying, of kind of seeing it from tech perspective, management perspective, tech perspective, and the bigger picture of what you do. Because yeah, the technician, their purpose is to generate revenue. Because like you said, you feed the whole company of everyone in there that makes it possible to take care of a customer to the fullest extent, right? It requires someone to answer the phone, requires someone to schedule, to dispatch, to do a whole lot of things. And so there's a lot of responsibility there. So how do you kind of keep everything in perspective then? Like, do you feel pressure? Do you have ways to kind of handle things like that? Like what helps you keep moving and going and just focus, with all that being said, just focus on the customer who's in front of you.
Yeah, it's not my role to know what everybody else is doing. My job is to provide the best service for the customer that I'm there and then just do my job. I mean, it's not my job to worry about what's going on with the office or the other techs and stuff like that. Like it's not my place.
And
So
then so
I just stay where I'm at, stay in my lane and help the customer and
one call at a time. Yeah. What in your mind, so you said it's your job to do a good job. There's a number of ways that we could try to measure or say this is a good job, this is not a good job. I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of it though is the customer's perspective of sometimes the customer, in some scenarios, the customer buys. So on paper, it looks like a good job, but the customer's not necessarily happy about it. And they might say, okay, yeah, but I'm never using you again. So ultimately, what is your definition of doing a good job as a technician, just in kind of totality?
That's a good question. It's kind of a catch 22 because I think every call where you do a good job, the customer always asks for you, right? The next time you go out there, I think that that's a good job. You could get reviews. Like you said, there's 1,000 ways to do it. But I think the way that I look at it is if I'm doing a good job, the customers are writing reviews, they're just giving the company good feedback on me. And my service ticket shows that because it goes back to the trust. So
Yeah,
if I don't have good trust and I'm not giving good customer service and they aren't happy, my numbers aren't going to be there. I mean, their defense is going to stay up.
yeah. And there's a big picture element too, right? Because again, like I was saying, if you just look at one call, sometimes that's not the whole story. Because maybe you go run a call and the homeowner doesn't spend money on that call. 4 months later, they buy a new system from you because you did such a good job in that moment. That trust was built. Just the timing wasn't right. Do you sort of see that big picture thing kind of playing out too versus the small picture, or like where's your perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, from seeing where this company started to where it's now, that shows that we've done a good job. I mean, we have probably, I don't know the number, but if I was guessing, I would say we probably have between 2 to 4,000 maintenance customers. And when I first started, that was probably two or three. So that shows that we've done a good job over the course of the time because we've retained a lot more customers than we had prior and the company's growing. So I think as long as I do my job, I do a good job, and everybody else does theirs, then the company will continue to grow and we'll just keep getting more customers.
Yeah. Austin, I have to start wrapping this up. It's something that I'm curious from you because I know you're a learner. I see you over the years, classes, I see still show up, for different trainings. You do really well as a tech. What are you currently personally working on? You tell me, what's your focus right now as a learner that you're trying to get better at?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the next level of leadership. So I don't know if you ever read the 5 levels of leadership.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm currently working on. I've been working on that for probably the last year and a half.
Tell
Of
me
course,
about that. What goes into that? What specifically does that mean? Like, what skills do you need or talents do you need to go to that next level?
that's a really good question. I think the ultimate level is obviously a level 5, which is putting yourself way behind everybody else and training people to be able to take your position, knowing that you don't need to be there anymore. Reading the book, I used to think I was like a number 4 or 5 level leader, which is like, hey, trying to help the team out and everything. And then once you start reading that book, it opens your perspective. And then you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I was not even a level 1 leader. So right now I'm probably on a 2 to level 3 if I was to guess, but I mean, that just takes time, man. It takes time. It's not something that just comes.
Yeah, that's good. I think we should always have those learning type of goals and, even increasing your leadership and working on those skills and moving up levels. That probably also directly benefits you in your technician skills too. Again, in your interactions with homeowners, because in some ways, being a technician in a home is a leadership position, right? The homeowner, wants to be in control and everything like that, but two, there is a leadership element that I think that goes in there. Have you kind of made that connection too
Yeah.
of, yeah. So any thoughts there of that connection?
No, I mean, there's times where you have to let the customer think that they're leading it. And even though you're in control of the conversation, and then there's times where they are leading it and you have to be behind them. At the end of the day, it's their boat. We're just a passenger on the boat.
Yeah. There's there's another leadership book that I really like by Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last. And it is kind of like that idea of what you're talking about of like a level 5 and just even with the customer where I think a lot of times our concept of a leader is someone who goes first, right? Speaks first, gives an opinion first, answers first. And this kind of idea of like, no, actually, no, leadership is not as necessarily about that, right? It's about creating environments that sometimes the leader goes last and does last. And I think about that like with technicians too, of letting the homeowner speak first, letting the homeowner ask questions, be listening, be empathetic, and that's actually leading.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Well, Austin, any last piece of advice? You've got a decade of experience. You've been through a program. Any last words of advice you want to give to any technicians who might be listening to this?
Just keep on track. Biggest thing I'll probably say is have a meaningful goal, track your numbers, measure them, and then just do you.
It's the fundamentals. Those fundamentals work. Everyone wants a magic silver bullet, but it's the fundamentals. Have good goals. That means something. Track your numbers and go do it. I love it. Austin, thank you for being on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to the Trusted Technician Podcast. If you would like to learn more about SBE, you can find us online at sbeodyssey.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.